It was a bright and sunny afternoon when she decided to visit the luxury car showroom. Her belly was round and glowing with the life she was carrying, and she could feel the baby moving gently as she walked. She had been dreaming about this day for weeks, thinking about the kind of car that would carry her family safely and comfortably. She wasn't thinking about extravagance, she just wanted something reliable, spacious, and elegant. A car that could be a little treat for herself and the new life she was bringing into the world. She entered the showroom with a quiet confidence, holding her husband's hand. They were a team, always supportive of each other, and today was no different. She could already imagine the excitement of sitting in the driver's seat of a shiny new car, the smell of leather, the feeling of the wheel in her hands. Every detail mattered to her. She had been saving for months and had researched every model she was interested in. She wanted to make sure she made the right choice. From the moment they stepped in, the atmosphere felt a little different. The showroom was sparkling, with sunlight reflecting off polished car surfaces, but behind the counter a saleswoman glanced their way and immediately made her presence felt, not in a welcoming way but in a way that made them feel out of place. She didn't walk over to greet them. Instead, she exchanged a quick look with a colleague, and a small, almost imperceptible smirk appeared on her face. The woman took a deep breath, reminding herself not to let anything ruin the experience. She smiled politely as she approached the first car, gently running her hands along the smooth hood. She could feel the power and elegance in the metal, and for a moment she allowed herself to imagine driving it, imagining the family trips, the outings, and the long drives where the baby would be safe in the back seat. Her husband stood beside her, quietly watching, occasionally glancing at her belly with a soft smile. The saleswoman finally came over, but her approach was cold and clipped. "Can I help you?" she asked, not with a smile, but with a tone that sounded more like a question, of obligation than interest. The woman explained she was curious about a few models and wanted to know their features. The saleswoman barely listened, interrupting her mid-sentence with suggestions that were clearly meant to steer her toward cheaper cars. It wasn't just the interruption, it was the tone, the way she leaned back slightly as if saying, "You're not serious. You shouldn't be here." Despite feeling the sting of disrespect, she kept her composure. She straightened her posture, smiled, and nodded, carefully responding to each question. Her hands rested on her belly, a small source of strength and calm. She felt protective, not just of herself, but of the little life growing inside her. She reminded herself that she deserved respect, and she refused to let someone else's assumptions define her experience. The saleswoman continued, now speaking directly to her husband, ignoring her completely. Every answer, every explanation was directed to him, as if she were invisible. She felt a flush of frustration rise in her chest, but she kept her voice calm and measured. She asked questions, seeking details about the engine, the seating, the safety features, and the warranty. Each time, the saleswoman brushed her off or gave vague answers, clearly assuming she wouldn't understand or couldn't afford the car she was interested in. Other staff members walked by, observing the interaction, silently. No one stepped in to offer assistance or correct the rude behavior. She noticed a few customers glancing over, sensing the tension, but no one spoke. It was a quiet kind of humiliation, one that built slowly with each dismissive comment, each overlooked question. She could feel her heartbeat quicken slightly, a mix of anger and disappointment. She had come here for excitement, for joy, and instead she was being treated as though she didn't belong. Her husband noticed the tension as well, his jaw tightening slightly. He exchanged a quiet look with her, a glance that said, "We're in this together." She appreciated that. It reminded her that she wasn't alone, that she had someone who respected her, who valued her opinions, and who knew her worth. It gave her strength to continue the conversation without raising her voice or showing her frustration. She decided to focus on the cars instead of the attitude. She walked to another model, running her fingers along the smooth leather seats, opening the door to feel the space inside. She imagined how the baby car seat would fit in the back, how comfortable it would be on long trips, how easy it would be to buckle the little one in safely. She asked the saleswoman again about specific features, safety ratings, fuel efficiency, and technological upgrades. This time, the saleswoman's responses were even shorter, clipped, as if speaking to her was a chore rather than a service. Despite this, she didn't allow herself to be discouraged. She spoke politely but firmly, clarifying what she wanted to know, asking for more details where needed. Each question was deliberate, each inquiry measured, as if to silently challenge the assumption that she didn't belong here. She wanted to be taken seriously, not just for herself, but to show her child even before birth that dignity and respect could not be overlooked. A few minutes passed, and the tension grew. The saleswoman's behavior became harder to ignore. She wasn't just dismissive anymore. There was a thin edge of judgment in her voice, a subtle suggestion that she didn't deserve to be here, that perhaps a woman like her couldn't possibly afford these cars. It was the kind of small, cutting remark that could easily be overlooked by others but hit directly at the heart when experienced personally. She felt a mix of emotions, anger, disbelief, and a quiet determination. She thought about leaving, about walking out of the showroom and finding a place where she would be treated with respect. But she also realized that walking away would give the saleswoman exactly what she wanted: the satisfaction of thinking she had been right about them. She wanted to reclaim the moment, to assert her presence without confrontation. So she stayed. She continued to ask her questions, listening carefully to the responses, nodding politely, and taking notes in her mind about each feature. She examined every car with care, weighing the pros and cons silently, determined not to let the subtle prejudice spoil her experience. Every step she took through the showroom was measured, her posture upright, her head held high. It was a quiet rebellion, but a powerful one. Her husband remained by her side, supportive but silent. He could see the frustration, the small indignities, and he wanted to intervene. But he waited, letting her handle it first. He understood that she was capable of standing up for herself in her own way, and he respected that. Sometimes simply enduring with dignity was stronger than confrontation. The atmosphere in the showroom was a strange mix of tension and beauty. Cars gleamed under the showroom lights, polished to perfection, almost inviting her to forget the treatment she was receiving. But she couldn't. The contrast between the beauty of the cars and the coldness of the staff only made the experience more frustrating. She reminded herself why she was here: not to be judged, but to make a thoughtful, exciting choice for her family. At one point, she leaned against the hood of a sleek SUV, imagining her child safely buckled into a car seat, looking out at the world with wide eyes. The thought brought a small smile to her face, a reminder of why she was doing this. The cars were important, yes, but the life she was nurturing, the family she was protecting, that was what truly mattered. Nothing, not even a dismissive saleswoman, could take that away. The saleswoman, meanwhile, seemed increasingly impatient. Her tone grew sharper, her body language tighter. She asked again if they were serious about buying, as if the question hadn't already been answered. Each word felt heavier than the last, a silent assumption that they didn't belong. But she didn't flinch. She answered calmly, clearly stating her interest, detailing exactly what she was looking for, and showing a clear understanding of the cars and their value. This quiet defiance, this insistence on being acknowledged, was her shield. She wasn't loud, she wasn't confrontational, but she was present, firm in her purpose and unshakable in her dignity. She could feel her strength growing with each question, each careful observation. She knew she deserved respect, and she refused to allow anyone to take that away. As the first part of their visit came to a close, she felt a mixture of fatigue and triumph. Fatigue from the emotional effort of dealing with disrespect, and triumph from knowing that she had maintained her composure, her dignity, and her purpose. She had set the tone quietly but firmly. She belonged here just as much as anyone else, and she would not be dismissed. Little did the saleswoman know, this visit was only the beginning, and the true revelation of who they were, and the respect they deserved was yet to come. But for now, she left the first part of her story in the showroom, standing tall, confident, and quietly powerful, ready for whatever came next. After a few moments of examining the car, she decided to sit inside one of the SUVs. She opened the door slowly, taking a deep breath as the smell of leather and new materials filled her senses. She ran her fingers over the dashboard, feeling the smooth surfaces and imagining how it would feel to drive this car with her family. Her husband stood close by, quietly observing her excitement and offering a reassuring smile. They had been dreaming about this moment for months, and it should have been joyful, yet something in the air made her uneasy. The saleswoman approached again, her expression a mixture of impatience and thinly veiled judgment. "So, are you serious about this car or just looking?" she asked sharply. The words were unnecessary and rude, implying that she wasn't capable of making a serious decision. She kept her smile polite, answering in a calm, even voice, explaining that she was indeed considering a purchase and wanted to understand all the features of the car before deciding. The saleswoman raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. She seemed to assume that because the woman was pregnant and in her mind didn't fit a certain image, she couldn't possibly be the one making the decisions. Every comment and glance was full of subtle judgment. It was the kind of disrespect that wasn't loud or aggressive, but it weighed heavily, creating a quiet tension in the room. She could feel the discomfort building, but she refused to let it affect her. She focused on the car, asking detailed questions about its safety features, fuel efficiency, and technology upgrades. She wanted to make it clear that she was knowledgeable, informed, and serious. She noticed how the saleswoman's tone shifted slightly, but it was still laced with doubt. As they continued exploring the vehicles, she couldn't help but notice how other staff members watched quietly from a distance. None of them intervened or offered assistance, as if they were waiting to see how the situation would unfold. She felt a quiet frustration. She was not being respected for her curiosity, her intelligence, or her ability to make a serious purchase. Instead, she was being judged for appearances. Her husband finally stepped a little closer, sensing that the tension was becoming too much. He didn't speak immediately, but offered subtle gestures of support, a reassuring touch on her arm, a nod of understanding. He knew that this was not just about buying a car. It was about standing up to the quiet assumptions and prejudices that people sometimes carry. He wanted her to feel supported, knowing that he respected her decisions and her strength. She took a deep breath and continued her questions, ignoring the subtle digs from the saleswoman. She asked about the warranty, about maintenance packages, about insurance options. Each question was answered vaguely or redirected to cheaper models, as if the saleswoman assumed she couldn't afford what she was asking about. She smiled politely, refusing to show irritation, and asked again, more firmly this time. She wanted the saleswoman to understand that she would not be dismissed so easily. The saleswoman finally seemed to realize that politeness alone wouldn't be enough to intimidate her. She leaned back slightly, folding her arms, and spoke in a sharper tone. "I just want to make sure you understand what you're getting into," she said, as if the woman lacked the knowledge or experience to comprehend the car's features. It was condescending, and yet she remained calm. She answered each question, clearly providing thoughtful explanations and demonstrating her understanding. Her husband, seeing the subtle disrespect, decided it was time to speak up. He stepped closer, standing beside her, and asked a few technical questions about the car himself. He spoke with authority, clearly experienced and knowledgeable, which forced the saleswoman to take notice. But even then, she continued to redirect her attention to him, speaking over the woman and ignoring her presence. It was clear she had made an assumption about who was in charge, and she wasn't willing to reconsider it easily. Despite the growing tension, she maintained her composure. She reminded herself that this was about more than just buying a car. It was about standing up to assumptions, about showing that she deserved respect regardless of appearances. She focused on the cars, running her hands over each surface, opening doors and imagining her family's future inside each vehicle. She refused to let the saleswoman's behavior ruin what should have been an exciting experience. The saleswoman, sensing that her attitude was not intimidating her, grew impatient. She started speaking faster, giving incomplete answers and even making small remarks that hinted at disbelief. "I just don't want you to waste your time if you're not serious," she said, implying that the woman's questions and interest were not genuine. But the woman didn't react with anger. Instead, she calmly asked her next question, demonstrating knowledge and interest that could not be ignored. Her husband noticed the change in tone and stepped in subtly. He didn't confront the saleswoman aggressively, but asked for additional details about specific features, reinforcing that they were serious buyers. The dynamic in the showroom began to shift slightly, but the saleswoman still struggled to mask her judgment. She was clearly uncomfortable, but the woman remained composed, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing her upset. As they moved to another car, the woman's excitement began to return, despite the disrespect she had faced. She opened the door to a sleek sedan, running her hand along the leather seats, feeling the quality of the materials. She imagined long drives with her family, the baby safely secured in the back, the comfort and safety of everyone inside. The thought brought a small smile to her face, a reminder of why she was here and why she deserved to be treated with respect. The saleswoman followed them, still speaking in a clipped, impatient tone. She asked again if they were certain about their interest, as if repeating the question would somehow make them leave. But the woman ignored the insinuation and continued her exploration, asking detailed questions about the car's performance and safety features. Each question was precise, informed, and deliberate, showing that she was not a casual browser but a serious buyer. Her husband noticed how the saleswoman was treating her and subtly reinforced her position. He made a few comments about their experience with luxury vehicles, their attention to detail, and their understanding of car specifications. This not only highlighted their knowledge, but also subtly challenged the assumptions the saleswoman had made. The tension in the room grew, but the woman felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. She was making her presence felt without raising her voice or showing frustration. Despite the stress of the interaction, she remained focused on her goal. She carefully considered each car, imagining how it would fit into her family's life. She asked about trunk space for baby strollers, about safety ratings for children, about fuel efficiency for long trips. Each question demonstrated that she had done her homework, that she was informed and serious about making a decision. Other staff members in the showroom began to notice the dynamic as well. Some exchanged glances, silently acknowledging the tension between the woman and the saleswoman. No one spoke up yet, but the room felt charged with quiet anticipation. It was clear that assumptions were being challenged, and the woman could sense that her presence was making an impact, even without words. The saleswoman, now visibly frustrated, made a few more dismissive remarks, suggesting that perhaps a different model would be more suitable for them. But the woman smiled politely and insisted on seeing the model she was genuinely interested in. She refused to accept anything less than the attention and respect she deserved. Her husband stayed close, offering subtle support, ready to intervene if necessary, but allowing her to lead the interaction. He admired her patience and determination, knowing that she was handling the situation with grace and confidence. The experience was draining, but it was also empowering. She was proving to herself and quietly to others around her that she would not be underestimated or dismissed. As the visit continued, the woman could feel a sense of quiet victory growing within her. Each question answered, each observation made, each subtle challenge to the saleswoman's assumptions was a step toward reclaiming her dignity. She reminded herself that this was about more than just cars. It was about respect, about standing up for herself and her family, and about refusing to be judged unfairly. Finally, after what felt like hours, but was only part of their visit, she stepped back from the last car she was considering. She had gathered all the information she needed, evaluated each option carefully, and had made her presence unmistakably known. She had been treated unfairly, yes, but she had also shown strength, intelligence, and dignity throughout the process. As they prepared to leave this part of the showroom, she felt a mixture of relief and quiet pride. The saleswoman had underestimated her, but she had remained calm, composed, and firm in her purpose. She had stood her ground without confrontation, demonstrating that respect cannot be taken lightly and that assumptions based on appearances are often wrong. Little did the saleswoman know this visit was only the beginning of a lesson she would not forget. The woman and her husband had plans to continue their search, and the true realization of their identity, status, and seriousness would soon become clear. For now, the woman left this part of her story behind, standing strong, confident, and quietly triumphant, ready for what came next. By now, the tension in the showroom had grown noticeably. She and her husband had spent nearly an hour examining the cars, asking detailed questions, and trying to get a clear understanding of the features, performance, and safety of the vehicles they were interested in. Yet the saleswoman's dismissive attitude continued, subtly undermining her every step. She had remained calm, composed, and patient, but it was becoming clear that polite persistence alone might not be enough to command the respect she deserved. Her husband finally decided to step in more directly. He moved closer, his presence immediately altering the dynamic. He didn't raise his voice or confront the saleswoman aggressively. Instead, he asked questions in a calm, confident tone that clearly demonstrated experience and authority. The questions were precise, thoughtful, and reflected a deep knowledge of luxury vehicles. The saleswoman, initially dismissive, had no choice but to listen carefully. "Could you explain the differences in the suspension system between this model and the other one you suggested?" he asked, leaning slightly toward the car as if evaluating its structure. "And I'd like to understand the warranty options and coverage limitations more clearly." The saleswoman paused, her body language showing hesitation. She realized that this couple was serious, knowledgeable, and not easily intimidated. She had assumed that the woman, because she was pregnant and did not fit the typical image of a luxury car buyer, would be an easy target for casual dismissal. But those assumptions were crumbling, piece by piece, with each question and observation. The woman watched quietly, standing tall, her hands resting lightly on her belly. She felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. Relief that her husband had stepped in to reinforce their seriousness, and anticipation for the moment when the saleswoman would finally recognize that she had misjudged them completely. She remained calm, letting her husband's calm authority set the tone while maintaining her own composed presence. As they moved to another car, she opened the door and sat inside, running her hands over the leather seats, adjusting the mirrors, and examining the dashboard. She asked her husband to join her inside for a moment, imagining how they might drive this car together, how they would take trips with the baby, and how comfortable the ride would be for everyone. These were not just questions about cars. These were questions about life, family, and safety. The saleswoman, now fully aware that her previous assumptions were incorrect, struggled to maintain her composure. She asked if they had a budget in mind, her tone laced with skepticism. "I just want to make sure we're looking at options that are realistic," she said, as if assuming they couldn't afford certain models. But the couple's confidence and calm demeanor made it clear that they had the means, the knowledge, and the authority to make their own choices. Her husband responded smoothly without arrogance, explaining that they were familiar with luxury vehicles, had previously made high-end purchases, and were comfortable evaluating options themselves. His tone was calm but firm, leaving no room for doubt. The subtle shift in the room was palpable. Other staff members who had been silently observing began to notice the change. They could see that the couple was serious, intelligent, and knowledgeable, and the saleswoman's behavior was increasingly out of place. The woman took this moment to speak as well. She asked about the car's safety features, its handling on different terrains, and how it would accommodate a growing family. Her questions were thoughtful, precise, and clearly indicated her seriousness as a buyer. She spoke with quiet authority, her words measured and deliberate. The saleswoman, who had previously ignored her or spoken over her, now had to acknowledge her presence. It was a subtle but powerful moment. The couple, by remaining calm and composed, had effectively challenged the saleswoman's assumptions. They had shown that knowledge, preparation, and confidence could not be ignored or dismissed. Yet, even with the shift in dynamics, there was still a tension in the air. The saleswoman had misjudged them, and now she was forced to confront her mistake, though she did so awkwardly and without grace. Her husband, noticing the lingering tension, decided to gently assert their position further. He spoke about their experience with luxury vehicles, referencing specific models they had previously purchased, and the factors they considered when making such decisions. He highlighted that their interest was genuine and informed, leaving no room for doubt about their seriousness. The woman watched as the saleswoman's demeanor shifted, her earlier confidence replaced by a mixture of surprise and discomfort. The staff around them began to pay more attention, some whispering quietly, others simply observing the interaction with curiosity. The energy in the showroom had changed completely. What had begun as a quiet, subtle act of disrespect had now turned into an awkward confrontation of assumptions, and the couple remained composed throughout. As they moved toward another vehicle, the woman gently ran her fingers over the dashboard, imagining how she would organize the space for her family. She asked detailed questions about the car's fuel efficiency, parking sensors, and technology features, ensuring that every aspect of the vehicle was carefully considered. The saleswoman had no choice but to provide detailed answers, though her earlier arrogance had diminished. The husband stood nearby, watching the interaction carefully. He could sense that this was not just about buying a car. It was about correcting a subtle, yet meaningful, injustice. The couple had been judged unfairly, their presence underestimated, and now it was clear that the assumptions made by the saleswoman were completely wrong. Yet they handled it gracefully, demonstrating patience, intelligence, and quiet authority. The woman's calm demeanor began to influence the atmosphere in the showroom. Other staff members started treating her with more respect, speaking politely, and listening to her questions carefully. The initial assumption that she was not a serious buyer had been challenged effectively, and the quiet shift in respect was noticeable. She had maintained her composure, and in doing so had subtly educated everyone present about the importance of not judging someone by appearances. Despite the growing acknowledgement of their seriousness, the saleswoman continued to test boundaries. She made a few more pointed remarks about budget and affordability, implying again that they might not be realistic buyers. But the couple remained unfazed. They continued asking questions, evaluating options, and imagining life with each car. They explored. Their patience, knowledge, and confidence created a quiet power that could not be ignored. The woman even began to smile subtly, realizing the situation was turning in their favor. She had endured the initial disrespect with grace, and now, by remaining composed and informed, she had created a subtle but undeniable shift in authority. The saleswoman's attempts to undermine her had failed, and the couple's quiet strength was now unmistakable. Her husband, sensing her subtle relief, offered quiet encouragement. They shared a brief glance, a silent acknowledgement of the challenge they had faced together and the small victory they had achieved. It was more than just about buying a car. It was about standing firm, maintaining dignity, and showing that respect must be earned, not assumed based on appearances. The couple continued through the showroom, exploring additional models. Each careful observation was another reminder that they were informed buyers. The saleswoman now had to work to provide honest, complete answers, and the earlier dismissive attitude had completely disappeared. The room, once tense and uncomfortable, now held a sense of anticipation. The subtle correction of assumptions had shifted the balance, and the couple's presence was finally being acknowledged appropriately. Finally, after spending a considerable amount of time evaluating the cars, they paused to step back and review the options. They discussed quietly among themselves, weighing pros and cons, considering features, space, and comfort. The woman's earlier excitement returned, tempered now with the satisfaction of knowing that they had handled a challenging situation with grace. The saleswoman approached, attempting to regain some sense of control over the situation. "Are you ready to make a decision?" she asked, her tone now noticeably more cautious. It was clear she had learned a lesson, though perhaps not entirely consciously. The couple exchanged a quiet look and replied that they were still considering options but were serious buyers. The saleswoman nodded, clearly recalibrating her approach, and now treated them with the respect that should have been present from the beginning. As they prepared to leave this section of the showroom, the woman felt a quiet sense of triumph. They had faced dismissiveness and subtle prejudice, yet they had remained calm, composed, and strong. The saleswoman had underestimated them, but by the end of this part of the visit, it was clear that the couple's knowledge, patience, and quiet confidence had won the respect they deserved. Little did the saleswoman know, the most significant part of the story was yet to unfold. The couple's presence, composure, and confidence would soon reveal truths that no one in the showroom could have anticipated. For now, they left this part of the showroom, their heads held high, their spirits intact, and their quiet power evident in every step they took. After moving through several cars, asking questions, and carefully examining features, a shift had already begun in the showroom. The saleswoman, who had started the visit with an air of superiority and judgment, was now visibly uncomfortable. Her earlier dismissiveness had faded, replaced with hesitation and uncertainty. She no longer knew how to act, and each interaction was more awkward than the last. She could feel the couple's quiet confidence and knowledge, and it was challenging her assumptions in a way she hadn't expected. The woman, sensing the subtle change, continued to ask detailed questions about the cars, now focusing on technical features and family safety. She wanted to make sure she had considered every detail, how easily a stroller would fit in the trunk, the space in the back seat, the safety ratings for children, and the convenience of car seat installation. Every question was precise and intentional, demonstrating that she wasn't simply browsing. She was serious, informed, and prepared to make a decision. Her husband supported her quietly, standing beside her, occasionally adding additional points that reflected their experience with luxury vehicles. His calm authority reinforced the woman's presence and underscored the seriousness of their intentions. Together they created a powerful combination: knowledge, confidence, and composure that could not be ignored. The saleswoman, still attempting to regain control, suggested a few models she assumed would be appropriate for them. But the couple politely but firmly declined, explaining why those options did not meet their needs. They spoke with clarity and intelligence, showing that they had specific requirements and that their preferences were deliberate and informed. Each refusal highlighted their decisiveness and careful planning. As the interaction progressed, the atmosphere in the showroom began to shift noticeably. Other staff members who had been quietly observing could no longer ignore the dynamic. Whispers circulated subtly among them. They were witnessing a couple who were confident, knowledgeable, and serious about their choices. The saleswoman's earlier judgment seemed increasingly out of place, and the energy in the room was becoming charged with anticipation. At that moment, the woman's husband leaned slightly closer to her, lowering his voice just enough so the saleswoman couldn't. "Over here. Perhaps it's time to show them who we are," he suggested gently. She looked at him, surprised but curious, knowing this moment was approaching. He had remained calm, letting her lead the interaction, but now he felt it was appropriate to reveal the truth that had been quietly influencing their choices all along. She nodded slightly, trusting him, and together they decided it was time to let the saleswoman understand that her assumptions had been completely wrong. Her husband spoke first, his tone casual yet confident, as if revealing an ordinary fact rather than boasting. "I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, but we've purchased several high-end vehicles recently, and our family has a collection of luxury cars. We know exactly what we're looking for." The words hit the saleswoman like a sudden gust of wind. She paused, blinking rapidly, trying to process the statement. Her earlier assumptions that this woman could not be a serious buyer and that her husband would control the decisions crumbled instantly. The couple's calm demeanor, their confidence, and their detailed questions now took on a new meaning. They were not just informed buyers. They were experienced, successful, and capable of making significant purchases. The woman added quietly, her voice steady and composed. "We've been looking for a car that fits our family's needs and reflects the care we put into choosing the right vehicle. We take these decisions seriously, and we expect to be treated with respect." Her words were measured, polite, and yet firm. They were a reminder that respect is not optional. It is earned through acknowledgement of presence, knowledge, and intention. The saleswoman's face shifted through a range of emotions: surprise, embarrassment, and a hint of panic. She had misjudged them completely, and now she realized the magnitude of her error. She had assumed that appearances alone could define their seriousness, and she had been wrong in the most obvious way. Her previous behavior, dismissive comments, condescending tones, and assumptions now looked foolish. Other staff members who had been watching quietly now began to murmur among themselves. They could see clearly that the couple was not only serious but highly influential. The energy in the showroom had completely changed. The couple's presence and quiet authority had forced everyone to reassess the situation. The subtle lesson was unfolding. Never underestimate someone based on appearances. The saleswoman finally spoke, her voice hesitant and cautious. I apologize if I gave the wrong impression, she said, her tone lacking its previous confidence. I didn't mean to underestimate you. It was a half-hearted apology, but it was clear she now understood that she had misjudged the couple. Her body language, previously dominant and dismissive, was now uncertain, almost apologetic. The woman accepted the apology with a polite nod, refusing to escalate the situation further. She didn't need to confront the saleswoman aggressively. The truth had already done that work. By remaining calm, informed, and confident, she had corrected the assumptions without raising her voice or creating unnecessary conflict. She had proven her worth simply through presence, knowledge, and dignity. Her husband added with a gentle smile, "We're here to find the right car for our family, and we hope moving forward the focus can be on helping us make the best choice." The saleswoman nodded, clearly relieved that the couple had not reacted angrily, and now she fully understood the situation. Respect, it seemed, had been earned quietly but firmly. The couple continued to explore the remaining cars, now with the saleswoman giving them her full attention. Every question was answered carefully, every feature explained thoroughly. The tension that had dominated the showroom earlier was gone, replaced with a cautious respect. The couple's patience, knowledge, and composure had created a subtle but undeniable shift in the energy of the room. As they sat inside another car, imagining family trips, the woman smiled softly. She could feel her strength and confidence growing with each passing moment. The saleswoman, who had initially dismissed her, now treated her as a serious buyer, acknowledging her questions, her observations, and her presence. The transformation was quiet but powerful, a reminder that calm persistence and dignity can be more effective than confrontation. The couple's reveal also had an impact on the surrounding staff. Other employees, who had been skeptical or silent, now recognized the couple's seriousness. They began engaging more attentively, offering information and assistance without hesitation. The couple's quiet authority had educated the entire team in a subtle yet profound way. The woman looked around the showroom, noticing the change in attitude. What had begun as a frustrating experience of subtle disrespect had now become a lesson in humility and awareness for those around them. She felt a quiet sense of satisfaction, knowing that they had handled the situation gracefully without anger, yet with undeniable strength. As they finally moved to the last vehicle they were interested in, the saleswoman's behavior had shifted completely. She now listened carefully, explained features fully, and responded to questions thoughtfully. The earlier tension had disappeared, replaced with professional attention and a clear recognition of the couple's authority as buyers. The woman and her husband exchanged a brief glance, sharing a silent acknowledgement of what had just occurred. They had faced subtle prejudice, remained composed, and revealed the truth in a way that corrected assumptions without confrontation. The moment was empowering, a quiet triumph that would remain with them long after leaving the showroom. By the time they concluded their visit, the couple had not only gathered all the information they needed, but had also demonstrated the power of calm authority, preparation, and dignity. The saleswoman had learned a lesson in humility. The staff had witnessed the importance of respect, and the couple had shown that assumptions based on appearances are often misleading and unfair. Walking out of the showroom, the woman felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The initial tension, the dismissive remarks, and the condescending attitude had all been overcome without aggression, simply through knowledge, composure, and quiet confidence. She felt proud, not just for herself, but for the example she had set for her family and for everyone present. The experience reinforced an important truth. Respect is not given automatically. It must be recognized through presence, intelligence, and dignity. By handling the situation with patience and quiet authority, the couple had transformed a moment of potential frustration into a lesson for everyone involved. The saleswoman, once dismissive and judgmental, would not soon forget the couple who had quietly yet firmly shown the power of composure and confidence. Little did the saleswoman know, the couple's story and their approach would leave a lasting impression, not just on her but on everyone who had witnessed the visit. Their patience, knowledge, and quiet power had changed the atmosphere of the showroom and would remain an unforgettable reminder of why assumptions should never define how someone is treated. After leaving the showroom, she felt a deep sense of relief and quiet satisfaction. The tension, the dismissive looks, and the subtle prejudices they had faced inside had all been handled with patience and dignity. She could feel the baby move gently inside her belly, as if acknowledging the triumph she had just experienced. The sense of accomplishment wasn't just about the cars. It was about standing up for herself, maintaining composure, and proving that respect cannot be assumed based on appearances. Walking out into the warm sunlight, she took a deep breath and smiled at her husband. Their eyes met, and without speaking, they shared the silent acknowledgement of what had just happened. It had been more than a visit to buy a car. It had been a quiet confrontation of assumptions, a lesson in dignity, and a reminder that patience, knowledge, and composure are powerful tools in the face of disrespect. They paused outside the showroom, reflecting on the experience. Her husband spoke first, his tone calm and warm. "You handled that perfectly," he said. "You remained composed, asked the right questions, and made it clear that we expect to be treated with respect. You didn't need to raise your voice or show anger. You simply showed who we are." She nodded, feeling proud but also humbled. She realized that her calm persistence had been the key, and that reacting with frustration or confrontation would have only escalated the tension unnecessarily. As they walked toward their car, they discussed their options quietly. They reviewed the models they had seen, considering features, space, safety, and comfort. Despite the earlier disrespect, they had gathered all the information they needed and had evaluated every possibility with care. The experience had strengthened their resolve, showing that challenges can be faced gracefully and effectively without sacrificing dignity. The couple decided to share the story with friends and family, not out of a desire for attention, but as a lesson about patience, composure, and standing up to assumptions. They wanted others to understand that respectful treatment is a basic expectation, not a privilege, and that confidence, preparation, and calm authority can change even the most uncomfortable situations. When they shared the story, many people were surprised and impressed. Friends expressed shock at how dismissive the saleswoman had been and admiration for how calmly and effectively the couple had handled it. Some mentioned that they might have reacted angrily or walked away, but the couple had shown that strength does not always need to be loud or confrontational. It can be quiet, deliberate, and powerful in its own way. The woman reflected on how the experience had taught her a personal lesson as well. She realized that being underestimated is not a reflection of her worth. It is a reflection of someone else's assumptions. She felt proud that she had maintained her composure, focused on her goal, and let her knowledge and presence speak for themselves. She had turned a potentially humiliating situation into a moment of empowerment, not just for herself but for everyone observing. Her husband, noticing her reflective mood, gently took her hand. "This will stick with you, and with them," he said. "The saleswoman and the staff will remember this visit. They've learned a lesson just as we have. And the best part is, we did it with dignity, without anger, and without unnecessary conflict." She nodded, appreciating his perspective. Indeed, the quiet strength of their actions had made a bigger impact than any confrontation could have. As the days passed, the couple reflected more on the incident. They considered the subtle biases that often go unnoticed in everyday interactions, the assumptions people make about abilities, intentions, or status based on appearance alone. They recognized that these assumptions could lead to discomfort, unfair treatment, and even lost opportunities. And they felt grateful that they had the opportunity to correct such assumptions with grace and intelligence. Meanwhile, the saleswoman had a lot to think about. Her initial behavior, fueled by assumptions and subtle judgment, had been corrected quietly but effectively. She now had to reflect on how she approached future customers, recognizing that dismissing someone based on appearances can lead to embarrassment and lost credibility. The couple's calm authority had created a lesson that would likely influence her approach for years to come. The experience also left the couple with a stronger sense of teamwork. They had navigated the tension together, supporting each other, while letting each other lead in appropriate moments. Her husband's quiet intervention, paired with her composure and careful questioning, had demonstrated the power of partnership and mutual respect. They had worked as a team, complementing each other's strengths and reinforcing each other's confidence. In the following weeks, the couple finally chose a vehicle that met all their needs. The process, while initially challenging, had been transformative. They were more confident in their ability to navigate uncomfortable situations and more aware of the power of patience, knowledge, and calm authority. The car itself was important, but the lessons learned through the experience were far more valuable. The woman often shared the story with her child, even before birth, in quiet moments of reflection. She imagined telling them one day that respect is something everyone deserves, that assumptions are often wrong, and that the best way to handle judgment is with dignity and quiet confidence. The story became more than just a memory of a car showroom. It became a lesson in life, a narrative of strength, patience, and empowerment that would resonate for years. The couple also noticed that friends, family, and even colleagues responded differently when they shared the story. Many people admitted they had experienced similar subtle prejudice or assumptions in their own lives. They appreciated the example set by the couple, showing that one could face such challenges without losing composure, without escalating tension, and without sacrificing dignity. It inspired others to reflect on their own behavior and the way they treat people regardless of appearances. Looking back, the woman realized that the experience had changed her perspective on several things. She understood the importance of preparation, awareness, and confidence in everyday interactions. She also recognized the value of calm authority in addressing disrespect. By staying composed and informed, she had turned a potentially negative situation into an opportunity to demonstrate strength, intelligence, and resilience. Her husband reflected on the experience as well. He saw that standing alongside her, supporting her, and knowing when to intervene had been crucial. Their partnership had allowed them to navigate the tension smoothly, and together, they had achieved not only their immediate goal of finding a suitable car, but also a deeper sense of empowerment. The experience in the showroom, once tense and uncomfortable, now felt like a defining moment. It was a reminder that respect is fundamental, that assumptions are often flawed, and that calm, informed action can create profound change. The couple left the experience not only with the car they wanted, but also with a renewed sense of confidence and strength. As they drove away from the showroom in their chosen vehicle, the woman glanced at her husband and smiled. The baby moved gently inside her, as if sharing in the quiet victory. The sun shone brightly, casting warm light over the road ahead. The couple felt a sense of closure, satisfaction, and empowerment. They had faced dismissiveness, corrected assumptions, and emerged with dignity and tact. In the end, the story of their visit to the showroom was not just about buying a car. It was about patience, composure, and quiet authority. It was about standing up to assumptions, maintaining dignity, and proving that respect cannot be taken lightly. The experience left a lasting impression, not only on them, but also on the staff in the showroom, who had learned an important lesson about judgment, humility, and professionalism. The couple often reflected on the incident, sharing the story as a lesson for others. It became a source of inspiration for friends and family, a narrative about resilience, grace, and quiet strength. They realized that the true value of the experience wasn't in the car itself, but in the lessons learned about respect, patience, and self-assurance. As the days turned into weeks, the memory of the showroom remained vivid. Every time they thought about it, they were reminded that dignity, composure, and knowledge can transform challenging situations. They also understood that these qualities could influence others, teaching lessons without confrontation, through presence and action alone. And so, the story came full circle. What began as a potentially uncomfortable visit to a luxury car showroom ended as a profound lesson in human behavior, respect, and empowerment. The couple walked away with more than a car. They walked away with renewed confidence, a sense of pride, and a story that would inspire them and others for years to come.